The kettle whistled in the background as Dulcie Fairbanks folded her laundry with practiced care. Her cottage sat at the edge of a sleepy Northumberland village, flanked by wild heather and misty hills. She liked the quiet. It suited a woman who had long been forgotten. Once, Dulcie had been a ward nurse, efficient, beloved by patients, sharp of wit and soft of voice. But that was another lifetime. Her children, grown and scattered across the South, hadn't visited in over 20 years. There had been no fight. No scandal. Just silence. Slowly, painfully, they drifted away, absorbed by their own lives until Dulcie became little more than a name on a dusty birth certificate. She marked birthdays in her calendar. She sent Christmas cards each year. She'd even tried calling once. But after being redirected to voicemail 3 times in a row, she stopped. It was better not to expect anything. And then, one morning, a letter arrived. Not the usual bills or the occasional magazine from the Women's Guild, but a thick, cream-colored envelope bearing the emblem of a London solicitor firm. Dulcie stared at it for a long time before finally tearing it open. Inside was a letter with startling news. Mr. Leonard Barrington, a former patient she'd once cared for following a stroke, had passed away, and named her his sole beneficiary. He had no family, no children. Only memories of the nurse who'd once sat beside him during long nights in the hospital, reading aloud from the paper or humming old war tunes. The inheritance. Substantial. Several properties. Bonds. A countryside estate in Yorkshire. All hers. Dulcie put the letter down. For a long moment, she didn't move. The cottage, always quiet, suddenly felt too still. As if even the air was waiting for her to react. But she didn't. Not yet. 2 days later, the phone rang. She almost didn't answer. Hardly anyone called, except the village pharmacy or Mrs. Kettle from across the lane asking if her cat had snuck in again. But something in her bones made her lift the receiver. Hello. Hi, Mum. It's Simon. Her eldest. The last time they'd spoken, the Millennium Dome hadn't even opened yet. Dulcie clutched the counter to steady herself. Her voice cracked like thin ice. Simon. Yes. I heard about Mr. Barrington. Thought I'd give you a ring. It's been a long time, hasn't it? She could almost hear him squirming. It has, she said quietly. A pause. I was wondering, he continued, if you'd like to come down for New Year's. Eloise and Jack will be there. We thought it might be nice. Dulcie's breath caught. A reunion. After 21 years. Now that she was a woman of means. How curious. And yet, even more curious was how her heart fluttered at the thought. Dulcie sat by the window, watching the grey clouds roll over the hills. The phone call from Simon lingered in her mind. After all these years, he had found her. Or perhaps, it was something else that brought him back. She remembered the last time they spoke. It was awkward, cold, and filled with unspoken words. But now, there was a different tone in Simon's voice. Hesitant, yet hopeful. The idea of meeting her children again filled Dulcie with mixed emotions. Would they remember the mother who had stayed up through countless nights caring for them? Or only the quiet woman who had faded away from their lives? Over the next few days, more messages arrived. Eloise, the middle child, sent a brief text. Jack, the youngest, left a voicemail filled with nervous laughter. They were all reaching out, as if the news of her inheritance had unlocked a door long sealed. Dulcie wondered if their warmth was genuine or a cloak for something else. Was this reunion about family, or fortune? She decided to prepare for their visit. She dusted the small cottage, baked scones, and even bought a new dress from the village shop. Despite the unease in her heart, she felt a spark of anticipation. One afternoon, as she walked to the postbox, she noticed a letter with no return address. Inside was a note. "Looking forward to seeing you soon. Simon." Her heart quickened. The past was knocking on her door again. Dulcie stood in front of the old mirror, smoothing the pale blue dress she had bought from Mrs. Cartwright's shop last week. The fabric was soft and modest, just the right balance of respectability and quiet elegance. She wasn't accustomed to dressing up these days, preferring the simplicity of her faded cardigans and well-worn skirts. But this occasion was different. It felt like stepping onto unfamiliar ground after a lifetime spent in the shadows. She thought of the upcoming New Year's gathering at Simon's house in Cornwall. The invitations still felt surreal. After 21 years of silence, her children wanted her to join them. To celebrate. To laugh. To be a family once again. Yet, Dulcie's mind was a tempest of questions and doubts. Would Simon's wife welcome her, or was this just a polite gesture veiling awkwardness? What about Eloise and Jack? Had they truly missed her, or was the inheritance the magnet drawing them back? Could she face the memories of their childhood, some sweet, some painful, without breaking? The house where she had raised her children was miles away now, sold years ago after her husband's passing. Life had moved on, and so had they. The thought of returning to the places where she had once nurtured their dreams made her chest tighten. Her days became consumed with preparations. She cleaned the little cottage until the wood gleamed, dusting the mantelpiece where photos of her younger self and the children still rested under glass. She baked scones and lemon drizzle cake, recipes passed down from her own mother. The aroma of freshly brewed tea filled every corner. Neighbors noticed the change. Mrs. Kettle, always curious, remarked, "You look brighter these days, Dulcie. It's good to see you smiling again." Dulcie nodded, unsure if her smile was for the world or just herself. One afternoon, she received a phone call from Eloise. "Hello, Mum. I'm sorry if I sound nervous," Eloise said, voice wavering with a mixture of guilt and hope. "I just wanted to tell you, we really do want you there. For all of us. It's been too long." Dulcie swallowed the lump in her throat. "Thank you, Eloise. That means a lot." After the call, Dulcie sat quietly by the window. Outside, the winter wind whipped the bare branches, but inside, a tentative warmth blossomed. The years of silence seemed fragile now, like a thin sheet of ice waiting to be crossed. There were still many uncertainties, but Dulcie knew one thing: she would go. For herself. For the chance to see her children again, and maybe, just maybe, to find a way back into their hearts. The morning of Dulcie's departure dawned cold and clear. The frost glittered like tiny diamonds across the hedgerows as she packed her small suitcase. Each item folded carefully, a quiet ritual of preparation and hope. The journey from her cottage in Devon to Simon's home in Cornwall was long, more than 2 hours by train and then a bus through winding country roads. Yet, with each mile, Dulcie felt the weight of years lifting, replaced by a cautious excitement. At the station, the familiar bustle of travelers seemed distant, as if she was stepping into another world. She found a quiet corner of the carriage and settled in, gazing out at the rolling green fields dotted with grazing sheep. Memories flickered, children laughing in summer sunshine, the scent of freshly mown grass, the gentle rhythm of family life she once knew. Her thoughts drifted to Simon. Would he really be waiting? What if this reunion brought more pain than peace? She swallowed the knot in her throat and whispered a silent prayer. When the train arrived in Cornwall, the grey sea stretched endlessly beyond the platform. The salty air was sharp but refreshing. Dulcie stepped out, clutching her bag tightly, and made her way to the bus stop. The journey through Cornwall's narrow lanes was slower, the scenery shifting to quaint villages and rugged cliffs. She noticed the bright red berries on the hawthorn trees and the distant cry of gulls over the sea. Each detail anchored her in the present, a reminder of the life she had lived apart from her children. Arriving at Simon's house, a modest but charming cottage nestled among blooming camellias, Dulce's heart beat faster. The door opened before she could knock. Simon stood there, his face a mixture of relief and nervousness. He was older, his hair tinged with grey, but his eyes held the same intensity she remembered. "Mum," he said softly. "Todd," she replied, using the name Simon had once gone by in childhood. He stepped aside to let her in. The house was warm, filled with the scent of pine and freshly baked bread. Voices echoed from the kitchen, laughter, a clatter of dishes. As Dulce crossed the threshold, the years of silence began to melt away. For the first time in decades, she felt the fragile thread of family reconnecting. Inside Simon's cozy living room, Dulce sat quietly, her hands folded neatly on her lap. The room was warm with the glow of a crackling fire and the soft hum of conversation drifting in from the kitchen. She could hear the familiar voices of Eloise and Jack, her grandchildren, though the years had etched new depths into their tones. Simon came to sit beside her, offering a gentle smile. "I know this isn't easy," he said quietly. "But we want to start again, if you're willing." Dulce nodded, though the years of hurt weighed heavy on her heart. The silence between them was filled with memories too painful to voice, the long winter nights when she waited by the phone, the birthdays missed, the words left unsaid. Eloise soon appeared, carrying a tray of tea and scones. "Mum's been making these all afternoon," she said softly, placing the tray on the table. "She says they're just like Grandma's used to make." Jack, a tall young man with a shy smile, looked at Dulce with curious eyes. "Grandma," he said hesitantly, "we've missed you." Dulce's throat tightened, and tears blurred her vision. She reached out to touch Jack's hand. "And I have missed you all," she whispered. "More than words can say." As the evening wore on, stories flowed, laughter returned, and the walls of years spent apart slowly came down. Yet beneath the warmth, there was a fragile tension. The past could not be erased, only remembered and, perhaps, forgiven. Later, when the house had quieted, Dulce and Simon sat together by the fire. "Why now?" she asked softly. "Why after all this time?" Simon hesitated, then said, "Because I've realized what truly matters. Not money or anger, but family. And that it's never too late to heal." Dulce looked into his eyes and felt a small flicker of hope. The journey ahead would not be simple, but maybe, just maybe, they could find a new beginning together. The evening air was crisp as Dulce stepped outside Simon's cottage, the faint glow of fairy lights twinkling in the garden. Christmas was finally here, a time for warmth, forgiveness, and new beginnings. The house behind her buzzed softly with voices and laughter, a symphony of family reunited. Inside, Eloise and Jack were busy in the kitchen, preparing the Christmas feast. The aroma of roasting turkey mingled with the scent of cinnamon and pine. Simon adjusted the tablecloth with care, placing polished cutlery beside festive plates. Every detail spoke of effort to create a perfect evening. Dulce felt a flutter of nerves mixed with excitement. Would the past shadows return? Or could this Christmas be the moment to close old wounds? The doorbell rang, and one by one, neighbors and friends arrived bearing gifts and good cheer. The room filled with warmth and chatter. Dulce found herself drawn into conversations she once feared, stories shared, laughter sparked, and tears wiped away. As the evening unfolded, Simon stood and raised his glass. "To family, to healing, and to new memories," he said, his voice steady. Glasses clinked. Dulce looked around the room at faces she had missed for so long. The distance of 26 years seemed to shrink with each smile. Later, as the clock neared midnight, Dulce stepped outside again. The snow had started to fall softly, blanketing the garden in white. She took a deep breath, feeling the crisp air fill her lungs. This Christmas was not just a celebration, it was a promise. A promise that no matter the past, there was always hope for tomorrow. The morning light spilled gently through the frosted windows, casting a soft glow across the room. Dulcie awoke with a sense of peace she had not known in years. The past, with all its heartache and silence, seemed to have softened like the snow that now blanketed the fields outside. Downstairs, the house was alive with the joyful noises of breakfast preparations. Eloise hummed softly as she arranged plates, while Jack poured fresh tea. Simon was already at the window, watching the winter landscape with a thoughtful expression. Dulcie joined them, her footsteps light. The air was warm with shared stories and cautious smiles. The family, once fractured and distant, now gathered around the table with tentative hope. As they ate, Simon spoke quietly. Last night was the beginning, not the end. There is much to heal, and I want us to do it together. Dulcie nodded. I never stopped hoping for this. For a chance to be part of your lives again. Eloise reached across the table, taking her mother's hand. We want that too, Mum. Jack smiled shyly. We have so much to learn about each other. Outside, the sun rose higher, melting the frost and brightening the day. It was a new dawn, not just for the winter morning, but for a family rekindled, ready to face the future together. The days that followed were filled with small moments of joy and tentative steps towards rebuilding trust. Dulcie found herself laughing again, her heart lightened by the presence of her family. Each shared cup of tea, each quiet conversation, was a brick laid in the foundation of their renewed bond. One afternoon, as snowflakes danced outside the window, Simon invited Dulcie to sit with him in the garden. They watched the children build a snowman, their laughter ringing through the crisp air. Thank you, Simon, Dulcie said softly. For giving me this chance, for opening the door. Simon smiled. It was always open. You just had to find the key. That evening, as the Christmas lights twinkled softly around the house, Dulcie felt a warmth deeper than the fire in the hearth. She was home, not just in place, but in heart. The past years of silence no longer defined her. Instead, the future stretched out bright and hopeful, painted with the colors of forgiveness, love, and new beginnings. And for the first time in 26 years, Dulcie knew she truly belonged.